So Game Night was probably one of my biggest disappointments this year with respect to movies, and I'll explain why. As I'm watching it, first third of the movie, I can't overstate just how much I loved it and thought it was going to be 10 out of 10, instant classic. I was already starting to think about, oh, I can't wait to make a review and just rave and gush about how awesome this movie is. Now, I'll gush and rave about it a little bit. How it starts out, we have these themes of insecurity and jealousy, the doctor, the fertility doctor saying, what is it about your brother that makes you feel so emasculated? Just these on-the-nose lines driving home these themes. And then you have all these different elements. You have Jesse Plemons playing this creepy neighbor that you don't really know how he's going to come into it, that you got a Chekhov's gun there. And then you have little throwaway lines that were great where Billy Magnussen's, I'm going to look up the name, I might have gotten that wrong. His character, he says, oh, rich people, I read this article that they have fight clubs. And you don't know, is it just kind of a stupid throwaway joke, just a one-note joke, or is this going to be some kind of thing that comes into play later? So you start to get all these elements for a great thriller, a great psychological thriller with twists and turns and all these different things, and you don't know where it's going to go. And just this great tension that was great for comedy. You had it kind of everybody on edge. You weren't sure which direction it was going to go, and it made all the jokes for me just hit even harder. So I looked it up. It is Billy Magnussen who I'm talking about. I had that moment where you say a name in a review and then you realize, well, I have no idea where I pulled that from and if it's even remotely correct. But in this case it was. Now he's great because he's very funny in this kind of douchey, mimbo kind of way, just happy to be here, but kind of stupid, but also kind of shrewd and clever. And this is where he has this great blend of, like I say, very funny, but also there's this potential for him being very ruthless, very savage. So he was a great character because, again, just this perfect vibe of joking, laughing, but maybe there's something really dark and things are going to really escalate to horrible levels. And then Kyle Chandler as the brother that comes in, very nice, very charming, but a few comments he makes and he conveys this so well where maybe he's not all that he seems and there's something lurking there. So you have the sibling rivalry with the brothers, you have the creepy neighbor, you have all these elements for just an awesome, erotic, dark comedy, mindfuck psychological thriller where the whole time you're guessing, you don't know what's going on, but then we find out, and I won't spoil anything, but we find out way too early in the movie, like midway through the movie, we find out kind of what the big reveal is that's we really don't get any other big twists until the very end. We get some really stupid twists there. But for most of the rest of the movie, we kind of know everything that's going on. And it really deteriorated into this. There's a movie called Date Night. And it's basically just this boring married couple. All of a sudden, something happens and suddenly they're thrust in this zany, outrageous adventure that's totally off the wall. And it was not a bad comedy, but as far as any kind of classic movie that really lived up to that distinct vibe and unique feel it had at the beginning, it completely lost that and deteriorated into just kind of an absurdist farce. Like, again, there were some funny moments, but it was more, wow, this is so ridiculous and this is so absurd, rather than being really sharp, cutting comedy. And the movie was never not funny. It was a good comedy. It was funny throughout, but I do feel it became slightly less funny as it went on. I do want to mention Chelsea Peretti had a hilarious little cameo, but I feel like a lot of the jokes they made, they were jokes saying, oh, look at how stupid this character is. This character is going to make another stupid comment. And those jokes initially were very, very funny. Very, very funny, but they kept making them towards, and by the end, a couple times characters would make these kind of stupid comments, and I started to feel like, really, like, they're going to go to that well again. They think that well's not dry, that this character, oh, it's another stupid comment. And I just feel like, yeah, it just kind of ran out of steam. They just hit those same nails on the head over and over and over again. And perfect example, two of the characters, one of them finds out that his wife had an affair, not an affair, they were on a break, with a celebrity. And initially, it's hilarious, it's funny, I think it's this great premise that's really adding to the mix. But then it became, that was their whole storyline. They didn't get anything else. Every scene you saw them in, it was that same joke. And it just, I think it really did run out of steam, and by the end it was still kind of funny, but it just wasn't that funny. So I don't know, I rate movies pretty highly on how they end and how things build up, and I feel like, God, I just can't help but be really frustrated by a movie that starts off so strong and I feel kind of peters out. And then the twists, horrible use of the twist. So the first twist we get, just so bland, the movie opens and you know there's going to be a twist and you have all these things going through your head of all these awesome things it could be, and then the twist they choose it's fine, but it's just the most boring twist they could have picked. And then I guess to try to make up for it, at the end they try to throw in a couple more twists. And those twists they threw in, usually I do a part of the video where I explain the ending. I'm not even going to do that with this video because the twists, they didn't make any sense. And it wasn't like, oh, that's very unrealistic, that wouldn't happen in real life. No, like logically speaking, I don't believe the twist actually made any kind of logical sense. Real life and reality doesn't work the way they're saying it works. So by the end of the movie, you have these twists that for me, there's no logical consistency. They don't make sense. And then also we have this action movie level theatrics and just this crazy adventure that clearly nothing like this ever happens in real life. And I don't know why, because the movie started with these things like jealousy and sibling rivalry, and things like jealousy, those can lead to some of the most brutal crimes, and the most horrible things are based on these very real human emotions like jealousy. So why they took it to this crazy zany adventure level, I don't know why. I think it was unnecessary. So last thing I'm going to say before the ending, I'm going to talk about the moral of the movie, and it's a bit of a spoiler, so I'm going to save that till the end. Last thing I'll say before then, this movie, it was a good movie. Don't get me wrong, I know it feels like this is a very negative review, but a lot of this negativity, it just comes from my frustration with how great I thought the potential was and how little they capitalized it and just kind of coasted and finished the movie by coasting. Now, again, very funny, great cast, great premise, so many things this movie had going for it. Still one of the better movies of the year, I'd say, so far, not too high a bar. So yeah, don't think this is a bad movie, don't think it's not worth your time, don't think you shouldn't watch it. This is just me kind of venting my frustrations because I thought this was going to be easily one of my favorites of the year, a 10 out of 10. I loved the setup. I loved so many things, just didn't capitalize on that potential. Anyways, moral of the movie, it was just, first of all, it was very trite and derivative, this idea of a guy, he's settling down, has his wife that he loves, but he feels that he sees this path not taken, the greener grass of his brother, who is this larger-than-life figure, who has all this money, and he feels unsatisfied with his more average, normal existence when he sees his brother living it up. And then he goes to find, well, really his brother, he's not really happy. He's really just doing that because he can't have the normal picket fence. He really wishes he could have the normal picket fence, so just to cope with not having it, he has to do all these horrible crimes and illegal things that really looks glossy on the surface, but when you actually see what it really is, it's criminality and evil. And I think this is a really nice message. I have no problem with this being a good message that we should promote, but I don't think it's an interesting premise. I think it's a premise that's been done to death. So if you wanted to say, look, well, okay, it's a overused premise, but it's still important, and it's good to promote positive messaging, that's one thing. But in this movie, the end of the movie ends with him saying, well, I'm hyper competitive, but rather than me being hyper competitive in my own life, I'm going to settle, and then we'll have kids and we'll just push them to be really hyper competitive. And that's funny, but that's a horrible message because that's a real thing. Parents pushing their kids because they're unsatisfied with their own achievements, and kids being really screwed up because of that, that's a real huge problem. So if you're say, well, look, our message of, settling and the beauty of settling, well, it's not very interesting, but at least it's a good positive message. You completely spoil that by then making a joke about something that's really serious and you shouldn't really joke about. So I didn't like the message of this either. Really, yeah, it was just so either I'm going to say, look, it's kind of a boring, bland message, or I'm going to say, well, you're undercutting any kind of attempt to have this actually be a positive message by throwing in jokes like that. So anyways, kind of a negative review. Sorry for being a downer, but again, still a good movie, just wasn't as good as I hoped. Oh, and then last thing, I'll talk about the Harry Potter joke. So at one point, Jason Bateman's character says, Bulgarians, Faberge egg, what is this, Harry Potter? Isn't this the third Harry Potter? I think it's actually the fourth Harry Potter. So in the fourth Harry Potter, you have Victor Krum, who's Bulgarian, and then one of the challenges in the Triwizard Tournament is he has the dragon's egg. So I think that it's technically the fourth Harry Potter, not the third one. Very funny joke.